Oof. Hello, good morning slash afternoon. Super psyched to be here. We, of course, today are here for our monthly shop talk, all things entrepreneurship, personal growth, and playing big. And today we're talking about leadership, specifically why you need to stop waiting for permission and start leading. So let's get into today. Who's here? Who's here? What are y'all up to? Listen, I have my current obsession, which is the cherry bubbly water and the pomegranate little squirty stuff. And I swear this tastes just like grape soda, which is really funny because I'm not a super soda person, but I don't know, it works for me. I think because it's not super sweet. I don't like things that are like really strong tasting, really strong. You know what I mean? It's a sensory thing. So I like that it's kind of mild, little hint of flavor. What's up, Megan? Hey, Melanie. How are you guys doing today? How are you doing? I am excited to go and I have my earplugs in today. It's a noisy world out there, friends. It's a noisy world today. Hopefully that means I won't be yelling at you because you know when you have these in and then you yell. Hopefully I'll be able to keep a moderate tone, a moderate volume. I was talking with someone last night and saying, you know how there's those folks that do podcastings and they sound really cool. They have a really low voice. They talk really slowly, and then there's me. Hi, everybody. I'm always yelling and I'm so high. High pitched, not high. All right, friends, let's start talking about leadership. I'm really excited for today's conversation. Hey, Rebecca, happy Friday. Oh my gosh, the sun is shining today. It is so gorgeous. It is typical spring in BC, which is where sometimes it's raining and freezing. Other times it's like hot and sunny. It could be 3 degrees. It could be 17 degrees, all over the place. Cherry blossoms, I think, are almost done, which means we should be having lots of green leaves in our trees soon. Spring is here, friends. We friggin' made it. We friggin' made it. Yes, need this chat. Heck yeah. Me too. Me friggin' too. Is that the Milo brand? It is. And I don't actually love it. I don't actually love it. I usually use London Drugs, their little anti-theft tabs. I usually get just like the Safeway brand. If you're in BC, you know Safeway, or Compliments, the Compliments brand. I like the orange flavor. I like that one better. This really tastes like chemical. Like the chemical, like it's like the burn is real. But I was there, so I grabbed it. I needed more. But yeah, I will not get this brand again. But I mean, if you have a favorite one, please let me know. It's just such a fun way to jazz up our water. And I do. We drink more. I remember watching a YouTube or something. Wow. No, maybe it was a blog. I don't know, ages ago. And it was, I'll tell you, although if you go onto social media now, there's a whole like divide between flavored waters or not and what counts as water, what counts as hydration. It doesn't. Honestly, whatever, deal with it. But I was reading this thing. I think it was talking about Gatorade and how when there's a flavor in the water, we like our because of our taste buds, we will drink more of it. And that's a net positive. Like that's a good thing. Right? Like we want to stay hydrated. And I do notice sometimes with just water, I'll sip it, but when I have like some flavor, I'll like drink it fast. I'm like, yeah, give me that good stuff. So yeah, net positive, friends, net positive. What do we got here? Hey, Deneen. Hi, how are you? Megan, it's a good day. I filmed a couple YouTube videos and I have a meeting with peer support person. Shout out to me for asking for help. Big shout out to you for asking for help. Man, that's like can I tell you, of all the things that we struggle with on a sort of like an interpersonal, internal thing, asking for help is probably the number one thing. Like, would you not agree? Asking for help is probably the number one thing that we struggle with out of all of the things. I think it is universal, right? Melanie, you got snow in Ontario. I did hear that. Do you know what though? There's always fake spring in Ontario, and then there's always that mid-April snowfall. I know because when I lived there, the first year it got me. Every year after that, I was ready. So fake spring, second winter, and then it's like a week of kind of whatever, and then it's like hot and humid. It's like summer hits so hard out there. Yeah. Oh, snow. Use of flavor because yes, I drink more of it. Exactly. We drink more when we have the flavor. So friends, today we're talking about leadership, specifically this idea of why we wait for permission to lead And I want to talk about it. I want to talk about what leadership looks like. What is the characteristics of a good leader? How do you want to show up a leader? Where do you need to show up as a leader? And some of the, I don't know, barriers or mindsets or social conditioning behind why we don't lead, why we are always waiting for permission, for validation, And Megan, I feel like you have a lot to say on this as well, just from your own experiences of what happens when you step up, get it wrong, get some pushback, some extreme pushback, and then how do we find our way again? And I know that it is a fear for people in stopping them from leading. It's sometimes a fear for me, right? Like leadership is just, I don't know, I'm autistic. I'm a Capricorn. I'm a firstborn child. Like I'm a natural leader and I naturally just speak with authority, but that doesn't mean I still don't question sometimes, is this my place? Is this the right time? Could I have done this better? Am I handling this well? Would love to hear your thoughts today as we get into it. So I think the first question I have for us, I got a whole bunch of notes and some fun resources for us. The first question I really want to dive into is, what does leadership look like? Hit me in the comments. What does leadership look like? Let's just start by defining it. Yes, hang on. I want to read what you've said here. I took a big leap. I have been considering for a long time. I'm taking an ADHD coaching class, still going to keep focus on clutter, decluttering, and productivity for ADHD folks, but excited. Melanie, tell me more. So are you thinking of because obviously you are the queen of decluttering, right? And organization. And yes, us ADHDers or autistics, and honestly, neurodiverse folks, period. Maybe not autistics. Anyway, ADHDers, we definitely need help with the organization, right? I think most neurodiverse people do. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. Man, I will say that I do love a good, if you've ever seen when I've shared my screen into my Google Docs, they are organized. Everything has got folders and files and checklists. I do love it. But can you imagine if our hyper focus was organization? Melanie, can you imagine if our hyper focus was organization and decluttering? But my question to you is, are you thinking then of just really niching down to decluttering and organization for ADHD folks? Or is this going to be an interesting, off-roading direction that you're exploring unrelated to the cluttering? I'd love to hear it. I'm a seasoned middle manager, so this comes easily to me, but I sometimes do struggle with the tedious stuff with people. Yeah. 3C activation with coach with Brooke. Is that Brooke Castillo? I don't know what 3C is. I'm learning more about myself, but cohort is for all coaches. So perfect fit. Fantastic. I mean, that's a thing, right? I mean, what do they say too about in a lot of neurodiverse people, our special interests are ourselves, right? You know what I was actually thinking about? And again, I want to keep hearing, give me your definitions of leadership. Keep them coming while I chit chat with you. I know there's a bit of a delay, so I need to wait for them to come in. But I was thinking about that the other day in the shower, again, this idea of special interest. You know what it was? I'm going to give you some TMI, okay? I was looking at my feet and going, these guys are getting pretty dry and they could use I wouldn't mind a coat of nail polish on here. And I was thinking, what stops me from things like, my own pedicure days, or just things around my own self. I'll do it if there's a beach day, but just every day, meh, I don't care. And it's like, what is that thing that's missing? Is it missing in me? I don't know. Is it just not a hyper focus? It's not a special interest. But people who just their feet are always so polished, their nails are always so taken care of, right? Their hair, that is not something that has ever really been a thing for me. I'm just whatever. You know what I mean? I like to, I do have the clothes I like and the makeup I like, but what is it? Is it what is that piece? I don't even know what I'm trying to say, friends, because this is a thought that I've just had this morning. But what is it with this? I wish that my special interest was me a little bit more. Does that make sense? I'll go do things with people, but then I'll just be by myself, and not do things on my own. What is that? Okay, let's get into it. Okay, we got some good answers here coming up. Megan, leadership has shifted for me over the years. I used to think it was I'm such a dork, you guys. I used to think it was being strong and immovable. Interesting. But now I think it means being inclusive and being unstoppable force for good. I love that. Rebecca, I think the words leaders and managers have been conflated and misused so much that it could be hard to draw a line between the two. So, Rebecca, how do you draw the line between the two? How do you define manager and how do you define leader? Niching down, very cool, Melanie. I'm excited. I'm super excited to see how that plays out for you. Brooke Shipman. Okay. I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. Cool. So leadership to me is different from coaching. Coaching is helping someone to arrive at their own solution. Leadership is directing the solution. Yes, interesting. Interesting. Deneen, my son and husband have been told numerous times they have great leadership qualities. They are just very personable, non-judgmental, and lead by example. They listen more than they speak. Great. Love that. So and people gravitate to them. Yeah. So Deneen, I'm curious for yourself. You talked about your husband and it was your son, correct? What about you? What about you? Where do you fall in that? Rebecca, I hear you, Lindsay. It's so much easier to do things with or for others than by yourself. Exactly. I'm such a and I think this is why I'm always talking about community building and doing things together. My special interest is other people. I love meeting people and learning about them and, you know, what are their thoughts on things? What makes them tick? Like, what are they interested in? What are their geeky, nerdy, what's it called? Not habits. Like pastimes, their activities, like what do they like to do? Hobbies, there's the word I'm looking for. I love that. And then like doing this on my own is boring. I'm quiet. Interesting. I would say that my first introduction to leadership, well, no, I don't even know my first introduction, but there's a point in my life that really stands out for me when I got a card for, I don't know what it was for. My mom was celebrating something, congratulating me on something. And the card had the quote by Gandhi, be the change you wish to see in the world. And I would have been like maybe 15 when I got that. And I remember just like it being so profound. Be the change. Don't wish for the change, don't wait for the change. Be the change. And it really has become my guiding principle in my whole life. Like it just rocked my world at 15 and is an embodied part of my DNA. It is it is a canon. It was a canon event. It's a part of my origin story. And so this idea of being the change, I think that has a huge role to play in leadership, right? Because again, it's like you said, lead by example, right? Set the tone, be the change. And I think, especially in our world today, I think it can be so easy to wait around for someone else to step up and do something. And again, it is a call for us to be the thing we want. I remember somebody sharing with me because we were talking about recycling. Random, I know. And how there's this narrative, right, about like recycle and you're a good person and it's good for the environment. And it's something like 90% of everything recycled just ends up in a landfill. Like it's ridiculous. Like it is what do they call it? Greenwashing, right? It makes you feel better, but it's actually not. The key is use less, right? The key is reduce, reuse, and then recycle what we can't, or reduce, reuse, right? Anyways, but we were talking about that and like the executive function it takes to wash and rinse and sort and recycle, and is it even worth it if it's not, like most of it's ending up in the landfill anyways? And her response was, I recycle because that is the kind of person I want to be. That is the kind of leadership I want to demonstrate for my children. That is me hoping and wishing and working towards a better future. Right. And so it just kind of it makes me think of that, like be the change. Right. I say right a lot. I know, friends, it's annoying. We should do a drinking game where I make you all take a sip of water every time I say right. Nicole. Oh, hey, Nicole, what's up? I agree. Welcome to your first shop talk. I agree with the gravitating part, but the definition of leadership has also changed for you. Part of it is being your authentic self, whereas I was the loudest person in the room before. Hang on. Part of it is being your authentic self, whereas I thought it was the loudest person in the room before. I'm so curious. I'm curious what made you have that realization, and then how did that change the way that you showed up? Rebecca, to me, a manager focuses on the smaller day-to-day items, people management, project process. Yes, absolutely. And then here's the leadership. So leadership looks like the bigger picture and long-term goals. I work with startups, so maybe part of the issue is that you have to do everything. No kidding. Rebecca, what do you do? I don't know if I know what you do. Tell me what you do in the comments here. Melanie, yes, external accountability is easy for me as far as leadership. It's why accountability partners see see import are important for those of us that are ADHD. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yes, no more the two steps to take care of anything, but things like recycling can get backlogged for that reason. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Fantastic. So, okay. When I think of leadership, I also think like there's the be the change, there's the modeling. One of my good friends, Belinda Clemenson from the Women's Leadership Intensive. In fact, let me get her website. You can hop on her email list. Hang on one second. She talks a lot. That is her whole thing, is leadership. And she talks about you know leaderships, they innovate, or sorry, leaders innovate, right? They innovate, they think, they create. Leaders move people together, right, forward towards a common goal or mission, right? Leaders, as you said, listen, they support. It's not about dominating, right, or controlling, or that, like you say, that rigidity, right? It really is about, I think it's, you know what, it depends on the context and it depends on the situation. But I think in entrepreneurship specifically, it starts with your vision, your vision for what you can create, what we can become, where we can go, and then being really vocal and visible and clear with that vision and attracting to you the people who share that vision, and then collectively leading together, right? But it's interesting too when we think of leadership through a feminist lens, or a matriarchal lens, and how we look at the hierarchy of structures, of communities, of leadership, and how we remove that hierarchy and look at a circular, right, leadership model, a circular community model, where there's not one person who is imposing their will, but there might be a person who's guiding, right? Like I'm somebody who will guide, but especially in my small group mastermind, well, even in our sessions like this, I will guide, but I don't have the audacity to think I know everything and have all the answers. I'm open to getting it wrong. And that's another thing with leadership, right? Is we have to be open to getting it wrong. We have to be open to having feedback that says, hey, so and so, something you said that might be a little bit of alignment. Have you considered this perspective? Oh, dang, I hadn't. That was something that I was not aware of. Let me shift now my perspective on that. Let me lead in a different way. Let me communicate in a different way, right? I'm listening to the book Super Communicators, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. I have that as a resource today. But Super Communicators, and they're talking about that. They're talking about, how when we are in the world is complex. And when you are somebody who steps into big systems that need changing, right? It is common to get it wrong, often, sometimes. And it is our capacity to be able to acknowledge that and shift and grow and evolve. I think that also is a really important part of leadership. I'm going to come read some of your comments here. Megan, I'm very extrovert and have a lot of Catholic shame. As a result, I feel a ton of pressure to step up and be a leader in big showy ways. But over the past few months, I've been leading quietly. Tell me more. Again, I'm curious, what was the shift? And what does leading quietly look like now? And that's a great question. Do you think that leadership has to be loud? I mean, both Nicole and Megan have touched on this. Does leadership have to be loud? Does it have to be in your face, right? It can, but doesn't have to be. Nicole, the realization was working with women entrepreneurs and the expectation that we have to be loud to lead. But I have met so many introverts, like introverts, right? That are the exceptional leaders, so that was a catalyst. As I recently, like last year, found out that you could spell it extra or extra, intro or intra. So yeah, you can be an exceptional leader. that quiet leadership. Rebecca, I help life science startups figure out what rules from Health Canada FDA they need to follow and how to put systems in place to follow those rules. Oh, very cool. I love that. So yeah, that would make sense that you're working in startup tech, I'm guessing. Leadership is about helping and develop people too. Yes, 100%. Right. And I've always felt as a female leader, it was about supporting people with family life, work-life balance, illness, and disability, leading with empathy first. It breeds amazing loyalty as well. Well, it does, right? Because I mean, again, we are social creatures. We have survived and thrived in community, right? And so empathy allows us to put ourselves in other people's shoes, and also as a leader create space for people to show up as their whole selves without judgment, without pressure to change and be different, right? And that's something I think everybody, I was going to say neurodiverse, but like honestly everybody craves that. They crave the permission to be themselves without having to fit into a box, right? And the craving to fit in, to belong, like, fit in, not meaning to belong, right? Megan, the shift, getting canceled and retreating into my shell. How I used to show up, big, bold opinions being activating, now being validating and inclusive, and never posting while dysregulated anymore. Yeah, that's a lesson that is a hard one sometimes for sure. Yeesh. Okay, so what are some of the characteristics of a leader? We've talked about this now, right? We've talked about and I really want you to think about leaders that you know, that you respect, that you follow. What are some of those characteristics that you see? Whether you currently embody them, want to embody them, what are some of those characteristics? And while you guys answer that, I'm gonna turn on my heat because it's actually kind of cold. I gotta put my heat on. My hands are freezing. Hang on. Let me turn my little space heater on. So what are some of the characteristics that you really are working at embodying, have embodied, have seen? You know, when I think of characteristics of leaders, I do, like, it's so much of what we talked about, right? Is the capacity to hold on to the vision, stay true to the vision, and lead people to it, right? Create that community and lead people to it. I think to Megan's point as well, notice when we are activated, we are charged, we are in a fight or flight, space, and right, go inward, work on that first, and then come out the other side, right? It is the ability to, I think, see people's humanity and see the best and the potential in people. One of the things I've had to learn over and over and over, because I had a few people in my lifetime tell me this, and it really sunk in about 2017 when someone was telling me this. I have this capacity to see, and a lot of us do, right? To see the potential in people, and then to really paint that picture of what could be. And this person had pointed out to me that, Lindsay, people will get excited by that vision you have for them, and they will start to want to rise up for you and perform it for you. But sometimes they don't really have the capacity, or maybe the willingness isn't there. There's something else going on. The skills are not quite there. And what happens is they get excited and they're performing, and then they kind of crash and burn. It's not sustainable for them. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, and if that makes sense. Maybe you've experienced that as well. But it was something I had to be aware of tempering my own excitement when I see the potential in somebody, and not going too big too fast. And if we've ever talked one-on-one, it's easy for me to go big fast when I can see the potential. And having to temper that and be like, Lindsay, you have to meet them where they're at. And you might have that vision, but that doesn't mean you, like, again, there's that imposing the will. And hang on, because I actually wrote a note about this. I want to make a YouTube video on this. I wrote about this yesterday when I was walking to pick up my helmet, my batting helmet for baseball. And I stopped to take some notes, and I was thinking about how there's this dance that happens with leaders, with mentors, with coaches, whatever, where there's what's logical and then there's what fits, right? What feels good, what is true for you. And there are times with people where we'll sit down and we'll map out the strategy, and I'm like, well, here's what's logical, here's what makes sense, right? And sometimes that's it, that's the thing, and that person now has that freedom and clarity to just go. And other times they come back and they're like, well, actually, no, I know it's logical, but it's not what I want. And I was thinking about that with myself when I was looking at my year here and going, okay, I need to to strip some things away and focus up. What's logical? And logically, I would not make YouTube videos. I would not grow my YouTube because logically that's taking the most time, and I have other things that I want to do. But realistically, it's what I want. I love being on YouTube. I want to create more on YouTube. Right now we mostly only go live here, but I have all these videos I want to create. But so there's the logic, and then there's what's real for me and what's true and what's exciting for me. And so it's like, okay, well, if that's what you want, then you got to cut things out. You got to move things around to make space for that. And so even when I'm working with people, and when you're working with people, there might be like the logical, obvious answer, but then there's what's true and what's like what stirs a person. Right. And so it's like, okay, then you got to come back and say, I get what you're saying, but actually this excites me more. Great. Fantastic. Let's make a plan. That's that dance. Right. And so again, when we come back to this idea of seeing the best or seeing the potential, sometimes as leaders, it's our jobs to hold the vision, but we have to meet people where they're at, and we have to honor what excites them, what lights them up, what they want, what they're good at, what they're not as good at. Right. That was a lot. Tell me your thoughts on everything I just said while I read your notes. What came up for you as I said that? So here we have from Melanie, the sense of belonging is huge. People leave poor leaders behind. Yep, good ones will help you grow and succeed. They don't find your energy or success threatening either. Exactly. It's pretty hard to be a part of a team where a leader sees you as a threat, right? And that, I'm not going to, that's a whole other, I won't get into that. That's a whole other conversation. My fave leaders are nuanced, do no harm, but take no shit, and always learning. Yes. The learning thing is a huge thing. If we're not always learning, these are not quite the right size that keep falling out. Gotta find my other ones. Anyways, if we're not learning, what are we doing? I will always have my staff's back. Yes. Yes. I left my company after 23 years career due to poor misogynist terrible manager who would not hesitate to throw me under the bus. Prior to this dude, I'd been so lucky with amazing leaders. This is something I have seen, again, being in leadership roles. There's tell me if anybody here relates to that. And you don't have to tell me, but just see if it resonates for you. I noticed that there's a tell in some people who throw people under the bus, and it's this fear of getting in trouble. This fear of being punished, right? The other day, in my other business that I'm starting with my partner, somebody had said, well, I told them this and they didn't do it. You know what I mean? And I said to my partner, I was like, oh, they really threw you under the bus there. Okay. Like it's this awareness of, okay, this person is afraid of being in trouble. That's just not something that I'm going to necessarily bring up, but as a leader, it's something I'm going to be aware of and look for where I can reinforce and build safety and trust that this person is allowed to make mistakes, right? This person is allowed to get it wrong and be imperfect, and we're not going to get mad at them, right? And so I don't know if any of you ever relate to that. I know that I used to be like that too when I was younger, in my 20s, and this fear of getting found out, of getting in trouble, of being punished. Whether it's in ourselves or recognize it in others, and throwing people under the bus is one of those common signs. Again, as a leader, it's not that we have to necessarily acknowledge it head on, but we can become aware and go, where am I creating an environment where people feel safe and they're not going to feel like they're in trouble all the time. Right. And that's something, because I'll tell you, I grew up in the restaurant business, and as a manager, man, I was bad. I was a bad manager. I was young and I had to learn all these things. But I would be such a hard ass with my people. And like, I was not creating a safe environment for them. I was creating a miserable environment for them, if I'm being quite frank. And I learned a lot about what not to do. Right. I think leaders who just fit with me are funny, loud, leave space for me to disagree with them, and get excited easily. Yeah. We love enthusiasm around here. It's their own insecurity. Exactly. But it's the exact opposite behaviors to build trust and to solve problems. Exactly. And here's the thing, right? Like, it's okay to be insecure. Friends, it's okay to be insecure. And it's okay for other people to be insecure. And it's okay to acknowledge that they might be feeling insecure, right? When it is your boss and there is no growth or awareness or change happening, that's harder, right? But when it's a coworker or it's somebody, within your own community where you're the leader, again, how do we recognize that insecurity and foster a community that is safe, right? How do we reinforce that? I remember I had a really fantastic VA a few years ago, and she came with a lot of anxiety around getting it wrong and making mistakes. And so it didn't take long at all, but it was a few months of just like reinforcing, oh, this is a way that we'll do it next time, but thank you so much, this was fantastic. Like I was very, very aware of not like, this is wrong, I don't like that. Like, it was just a very aware of how I communicate and how I reinforce effort and like team learning versus putting it all on one person and like triggering that, oh my God, I got it wrong, they're going to hate me, they're going to be mad at me forever. So we've talked about some of the characteristics of what a leader is. I want to hear for you, where do you want to lead more? Like, where in your business, in your family life, your friendships, maybe if you're part of an extracurricular thing, maybe you volunteer, where is, maybe it's even just in communication styles, where is an area that you would like to learn more, or sorry, lead more, right? Like, I talk about this all the time, or like, you don't have to be a manager or a business owner to lead. You don't have to be a CEO to lead, right? We lead all the time. The other day I was walking across the street at a crosswalk and no cars weren't stopping. And there was a younger woman there, and she just was kind of like, didn't know what to do. And so I'm me. So I like walk out and I put up my hand and I'm like, hey, stop. And then I kind of looked back, didn't say anything. I just looked back to make sure she felt safe. And I was like, all right, let's walk. And then she walked and I didn't say anything. It was just all through body language, right? But who knows? She could have been there forever and cars were not stopping. And so I was like, well, I'll just go ahead and stop and get these cars to stop and we'll go. Actually, I remember even playing this video game called Journey. I'm going to be real nerdy here while you tell me your answers. So start throwing them in the chat. Where do you want to step up as a leader? So in this video game Journey, there's no words. It's just this beautiful music, and you're in this like sand dunes, and you're moving around, and you're trying to like free these little carpet flag things, and it's really weird and surreal and lovely and beautiful. But every once in a while, another player, so it's kind of like open world, I guess, because another player who looks just like me will show up and I'll see them in the distance. And I'll be like, oh, someone else is playing right now when we're in the same world. And there's no talking, there's no communicating. You're just there together. And I remember I was quite new playing this game. And oh my God, it makes me so happy just thinking about it. And I was like, having to get to this destination and figure it out, and you're maneuvering around these little like things that protect you from this like cool mechanical monster thing that's floating around, and you got to kind of hide, and it sounds scary, it's very chill. And this person would run up to the thing and then they would wait for me. They don't know me, I don't know them, I don't know who they are, where in the world they are. They would wait for me, and then I'd catch up, and then they'd go to the next one, and then I'd catch up, and it was just this lovely moment. And then at one point we went our separate ways, because it's kind of a like, you can kind of go your own paths and figure out new spaces and areas. And so then I started doing that, right? If I saw somebody else, I would go and then I would wait till they caught up to me. And it was just, like, you guys, that's an example of leadership, right? Leading. Gentle leadership. Yeah, gentle leadership. Nose is running because it's cold in here. One of my favorite forms of leading is my dad's. When he was driving us places, he'd always check the rearview mirror whenever he changed the radio station to see what me and my siblings were liking. Exactly. And that's the thing with this quiet leadership or gentle leadership. It doesn't have to be loud and big and bold. It's just an awareness of other people. And like, honestly, my responsibility, not a response, that sounds heavy, but like the opportunity for me to connect as a human and make sure we're all okay. Do you know what I mean? And responsibility sounds like a heavy word. I think I would grow a business to a point I can download tasks I hate on someone. Does that count? Well, not in terms of defining leadership, but in terms of how you want to structure your time and use your energy and effort. Yeah, I like that. We like a little outsourcing. And I mean, that would be leadership, right? To lead people. And so that's actually, Melanie, if we talk about that, especially from an organizational perspective, Okay, so how am I going to be a good leader in that? Well, I'm going to have good SOPs. I'm going to have really clear and explicit instructions. I'm going to be mindful to not overload people and only give them as much as they can handle until we're ready to go even more, right? I have, again, over the years, while hiring VAs and it not working out, and hiring assistants and it not working out, and then finally figuring out what works, one of the things I've learned is I have to give myself 3 months with them before they'll be fully up and running, because I can't just go, here's all the things and here's my hot mess and you figure it out. I remember hearing somebody say, as entrepreneurs, we always say, I wish my assistant could read my mind. Well, they can if you write it down. So just get it out of here and put it on a paper. So Melanie, if you think about leadership from that perspective, okay, so how are you going to create an environment where they can succeed? And how are you going to reinforce that they can step up and take ownership of their roles? In fact, that's something I say when I'm working with different assistants and things like that. When I bring them into my world, I'll be like, listen, I don't want you to think of me as your boss. I want you to think of me as your client, right? So I'm hiring you because your specialty is this, and I'm going to trust that specialty. And so you're going to tell me what to do. Now, that being said, I have to have my system set up so they can operate within that. And then once they're feeling comfortable, they run the show. Nicole, I want to stand in my power and feel confident about what I bring to the table. Yes. And on that note, what do you all think you bring to the table? What do you bring to the table as a leader? Megan, leadership is about others, not about me. That's probably the biggest thing I learned in the last year, 100%. That made me get like a little like, yeah, it is. Leadership is about others. So on that note, Megan, then where do you go for your own leadership? Like, who's leading you or mentoring you or peer to peer, right? Where is that space that you're able to be, because as a leader, I am fairly vulnerable with you guys, right? Like I'm often very vulnerable, but there are certain things I won't share or say or do because that I don't want, like, that's not your burden to bear. I have my business friends where I talk about certain things, but I am, for the most part, pretty vulnerable with all of you, right? So where are you going to where what do they say, like, we take problems up and praise down? That's like a corporate thing, but where are you going where you're taking your problems, right? Because we don't take our problems to the people we're leading, we take those to our peers or our mentors, right? Our leaders. That doesn't mean that we be fake and not real. It just means that there's certain things that it's appropriate to talk to certain people for certain things. Does that make sense? Yes, all of that. I live for the great SOP. No one should have to remind. Exactly. Sue, hey, welcome. Servant leadership. Exactly. Yeah. Can you define, Sue, what servant leadership means to you? So I want to dive into some of my notes here. One of the things I wanted to talk about is the impact, sounds so official, the impact of societal and cultural conditioning on self-leadership. So what does that mean? Societal conditioning, cultural conditioning, and how that affects our ability to lead. And I will say, especially as women, I use that term loosely. I will say people who have been socialized as women, let's say that culturally and socially, we are viewed as women and have been treated as such. Let's talk about the impacts of these things. Really quickly, first, I want to read this comment. Mostly, I'm trying to squash my needs so they don't exist. LO, working on that. Exactly. That's exactly right. That's what ends up happening. When we lead, it's easy to push down our own needs. No, we also have to find a place where we can plug into for that. That's why, like, I have some really, really great business besties. And this is why I'm always, one of the 4 people you should be building networks with are business besties, right? People you can grow with together over the years, and where you can just strip it all away and just be raw and real, and it's safe and they get it, right? Because we need that. As leaders, we are not robots. We are still humans. In fact, we are better leaders when we have somewhere that we can plug into and work through our stuff, right? Remember, we talked about if we're feeling charged, right, activated, fight or flight, we don't go into our communities and start, no, we need to figure that stuff out first. And so having those biz besties where you can show up raw and real and vulnerable and freaking out, right? Or like proud, the amount of times I will talk about you guys, I'm so proud. I'm so proud. It's because I know this early stage of entrepreneurship is so scary. Right? Oh gosh. Okay, let me keep going. We're gonna get to the social and cultural impact in just a second here. Sue, finding their needs and providing solutions. So let's, Sue, I'm gonna reframe this a little tiny bit, because let me ask you all, is it our job as a leader to find their needs, or is it our job to foster conversations and community and space where they can find their needs? Because one of the things that we want to be careful of as leaders is that we are not dragging people, right? That's something that's really important to me in my communities. And you'll notice this because there are times in the emails or our systems where I will be like very clear, here's the dates, here's the times, here's the Zoom links, but I don't necessarily coddle. I expect you're an adult, you're a business owner, you're going to take those dates and put them in your calendar. You're going to take that Zoom link and you're going to put it in your calendar. You're going to manage your own life, right? So I don't want to have to drag people in my community, right? If you need help, you're going to ask for it. If you're not going to ask for help, well, that's a really tough lesson you're going to have to learn about what happens when you don't ask for help, and you're going to have to work on that, right? But that's also why we create content to talk about these things. So is it a leadership to find other people's needs, or is it leadership to foster community and conversations where people can find them on their own? We don't want to drag in leadership. We want to create space and foster conversation, right? Tell me your thoughts on that. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Tell me your thoughts. Megan, people who aren't cis men, people who experience gender-based depression. Exactly. Yeah, I can say, and that's, you know what, I'm going to copy that line because I always, I can't copy. Okay, I'm going to, hang on, let me write this down because it's a great line. That's why I often say like women or people who are socialized as women, because it's, people who aren't cis men, people who experience. Thank you, Megan. This is great. Gender. It's one of those things where I've heard it before. And you know that thing where it's like, I should have written it down. Why didn't I write this down? Now it's gone. And then I try to Google how to use inclusive language around women, and it's like, it like gives me like this mess of a thing. And I'm like, that's not just, what's the line? I should have written it down. Sue, do your part. Don't try to control them. Respect them as they are independent souls. Yes. Love that. Yeah. Not to give unsolicited advice, for sure. That's another one that I've had to learn. I think that's the tism. That's I've had my hand smacked enough times and I still forget, and I will still sometimes give unsolicited. And this is that consent. Can I share? Can I offer? Can I give feedback? Can I talk into this? And just like, and that is, I will tell you, one of the most humbling things. And again, I used to think that this was like a character flaw, like I must be a bad person. Now I understand it's most likely the autism, which is when I see something and I would do it differently, or I don't understand why they're doing this way, or why they're saying this, or why they're acting like this. And I would like offer up, well, why don't you just do this? Or why don't you say that? Or da, 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 da. And I'd be like, man, Lindsay, like you don't know people's lives. Like, why are you so controlling? And it's like, nah, man, that's just the way my brain works. And I have learned to like, you gotta quiet that down. And I think the reframe for me is, don't assume you know what this person wants. That's the biggest thing. Don't assume you know what they want. Don't assume you know where they're at in their journey of like learning and figuring things out. And don't rob people of that journey. And that's hard because sometimes people will do things and I'm like, the direction you're going, that's gonna maybe not end so good for you, not so well for you, but learning. We've all had to fall on our faces. That's a tough one. All right. So my word for the year is balance, because I can do this easily for others. Need to hack a way to do it for myself too. Yeah, I think it starts with defining balance, Melanie. You got to define it. You got to define it for you, not for someone else. Yeah, respect. A million times over, respect, Sue. You are a leader, not a boss. Show by example, not order like a boss. Yes. Create a community so that they can be open enough to contact us. Exactly. That's what we want, right? That's what I mean when I say we foster a community and a space where there's communication, conversation, right? Megan, yeah, I really want to find their needs for them and drag them into the healing I think is best. Megan, I'm right there with you. Well, not as much now, but especially my 20s. Oh, when I tell you I was obnoxious. God. All right. But I'm learning how to just make space and follow them where they want to go. And I think also too, like important that we also acknowledge that as we endeavor to lead and we end up dragging, that's a part of our learning experience too. I think as leaders, people who naturally gravitate toward leadership, we think we have to be perfect. Like, no, we're gonna get it wrong. We're allowed to get it wrong. We're human and we're gonna get it wrong. And we're learning so much all the time. Learning doesn't stop at 10 years old. Like, we're learning all the time. And so I think also giving ourselves permission, like I said, to get it wrong, but also celebrating our humanity. If we get it wrong, it means we were trying, friends. Yes, to the fostering comment. Yes. Melanie, to develop people, you need to let them in on the decision making. Yeah, in the way of listening. Oh my god, I can't believe we're already almost out of time. What the hell? These things I think I only advertise these as an hour, but I think I want them to be 90 minutes because the conversations are too rich. So yeah, this is hey, oh wait, is that what I was people need to let them, yeah, decision making. I remember like in the early 2000s when the millennials were starting to I'm an elder millennial, right? We were starting to kind of come on the scene in a big way and starting to work and have jobs, and the Gen Xers and the boomers were like, what? Remember? I don't know if you're old enough to remember that. Millennials, shakes fist. And I called myself the millennial whisperer, and I would have these do workshops and trainings and things to help people understand. And one of the sort of, I'll say, characteristics of a millennial is letting us in on the decision-making process, giving us a say in what's happening. That is a value, a millennial-based value for sure. We want to be part of the decision making. We want to be in on. We were, I think, probably one of the first generations to say we are not willing to just do as we're told. We want to have a say in this. We want to understand why, and we want to be part of what we're moving towards. Right? Oops, kind of type. People need to feel heard and listened to and supported. Bring them in on the solution. They'll be engaged and supported and even more enthusiastic about the solution. 1,000,000%. Right? So, impacts of societal and cultural conditioning. So 3 things we want to look at. Internalization of norms, right? Individuals often unconsciously adopt societal norms, integrating them into their self-identity. This process, known as internalization, can lead to behavior that aligns with societal expectations, sometimes at the expense of personal authenticity. I feel like that is like my entire life up until about 37. So that was about 8 years ago. Up until about 37, I would say that I had been doing that, unpacking that, and then all of a sudden got smacked over the head with this hyper awareness of where I had been internalizing everyone else's beliefs, systems, ideas, and finally started to find myself. There's a book that I don't know where it is. There's a book that I contributed to where I talked about this idea of it felt like I was taking off this cloak of everybody else's shit and finally finding myself. So where do you think you have these internalized norms, these internalized sense of identity, these internalized rules that you must play by? Let's think of like maybe even at least one. Can we bring awareness to one, or have you had a recent awareness of one that you've realized, wait, this isn't even me. Why am I doing this? This isn't me. The other day, tell me in the comments, I was like, I think I had just finished watching Love on the Spectrum, the last season 3. Oh my gosh, you guys, I was a mess, an absolute mess. Crying my face off. It was so lovely. Anyways, I think I was if anybody, no, actually I won't give any spoilers. If anybody has seen it, you can DM me. I'm happy to talk in the DMs. Anyways, but I was, getting groceries the next day, and I was loading up my stuff in the trunk, and I was thinking, what's exhausting? Trying to be cool. Just being our authentic selves and doing what brings us joy, and exploring what makes us nerdy and unique and wonderful, and taking ego and perception and performance out of it. I'm all for that. Megan. Finally realizing that my pattern recognition is based on limited data, like how algorithms can be racist even though they're just ones and zeros because they were programmed by people with limited info. Yeah. So I'm like, I want you to break that. Hang on. I want you to break that down for me. So limited data, give me a second to wrap my head around what you're just saying here. So meaning you had limited data. Okay, no, I'm with you now. So you had limited data, but the racist, homophobic, whatever, bigoted, whatever, the people that were programming you, right? That's all you had. And I mean, this is why we listen to, and this is why diversity in leadership is so important. And we listen and bring into our world diverse perspectives and people, right? And lived experiences. My brain needed a second to wrap around that, but I got it. Brilliant example. Megan, I feel like I want to see a YouTube video or a blog on this topic specifically, please. Please, personal request. Not me in my I'm not like other girls era cringe. I've been there. I've done that in high school. Yep, distancing yourself from the feminine, from womanhood, from you know what I mean, like whatever you want to call it, distancing ourselves from that. Why? Because and this is the gender stereotypes. That's the third one I'm going to talk about, because let me read it right now. Gender stereotypes. Cultural conditioning often associates leadership with masculine traits, leading to biases against women and others who do not fit the mold. This can result in underrepresentation in leadership roles, internalized doubts, and leadership abilities. So that's how it affects leadership. But let's talk about this in our what do they call those years? The oh my God, the impressionable years? No, the years when we're figuring out who we are, right? When I was in school, people would call me a lesbian all the time. But I mean, this is the 90s, friends. Like, like the late 80s and 90s. Like, that is the worst thing you could be called. And you were an instant outcast. You know what I mean? If you were queer and a lesbian, right? And so I would do everything I could to distance myself from that. Now, to be fair, I didn't actually know that I was. They were picking up on that, I think, before I probably was, because honestly, I look back and like, duh. But I was like, absolutely not. So let me go kiss all the boys. Let me go date all the boys. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely not. And that's what we do, right? We distance ourselves. I'm not like other girls. We distance ourselves from the things that we have been socialized or are picking up on are wrong or bad or weak or worthy of exclusion, bullying, abuse, whatever, right? Like legit, too legit to quit. I'm slowly shedding my internalized ableism that says you must assume you're healthy. Yeah, I'm not. And I'm done operating from a false assumption, then wondering why nothing adds up. Oh my gosh, okay. I mean, I'm a story machine. You all know this. So that is something that I experienced when I blew out first one knee, then my second knee. And the internalized ableism was, I don't even know if I can call it internalized ableism, because I wouldn't call myself necessarily disabled, only because it is something that, like, anyways, I will say I was gonna say temporary, but it is a permanent, effect on my abilities. So, but I wouldn't use the term disabled only because I just don't feel like I am marginalized and remotely the same way as folks with, with disabilities, and especially on mobility, right? But I will say that the ableism in me really came out hard. And like you said, this assumption to health, this entitlement to health and mobility and movement and ease of movement. It was humbling, and if I dare say, a little embarrassing for me to be like, oh, Linz, wow, privilege much, right? But it's interesting because I just joined this softball team, and one of the first things I said was, I really want to join, but I can't run very well because of my knees. And they're like, yeah, it's fine. And we had our first practice, and I'm on the field, and I can feel this pressure in myself. Like, you got to dive for that ball. You got to run and get it. You got to da-da-da-da. And I can hear myself saying, shit, sorry, guys, shit, sorry. And then it was like after, because, processing takes time. I'm like, nobody else was apologizing other than the one pitcher hit this one batter twice. It was a very emotional moment. The batter was fine. The pitcher was not. Anyways, no one else is apologizing, right? No one else is throwing their body onto the ground. Like, the ball's rolling by them. The ball's rolling by them. So again, shower thought this morning was like, Linz, you got to ease up, man. Like, what is this expectation, this pressure you're putting on yourself that your body should perform a certain way, or else what? You don't have value. You're not good. You're a failure. Let everyone down. God damn. God damn. I might think my pattern recognition is infallible, but it's not. It's based on my biases and yeah, what I think I know. That's the biggest thing. So even though I think I know what's best for people, I might be totally off. Literally, that's the biggest thing. Is the like thinking and assuming we know what's best for people. That's the biggest thing that we need to nip that in the bud, right? So, implicit leadership theories, ILTs. People develop implicit beliefs about what constitutes effective leadership based on cultural and societal cues. These implicit leadership theories can influence who is perceived as a leader and can perpetuate stereotypes, potentially hindering diverse leadership presentation. So, this is when we get into who is the good leader. Right? When I was married, I would always default to my husband because I was married to a man. I would default to him all the time. He was a terrible leader, but he was the man. So he drove, he made the decisions. I just defaulted to him all the time, right? I remember being in this workshop for women and like finance, and somebody asked, what is your retirement plan? And I was like, well, to marry a man, obviously, and he'll take care of it. So we have these biases. Sometimes we aren't even aware of them, right? And how is that affecting both where we look to leadership, how we lead, and also as leaders, how we might be looking within our community for other leaders and maybe repressing or suppressing some and elevating others, right? And then back to the gender stereotypes and the cultural conditioning, right, of our own biases and how we distance ourselves from certain things, right? Or doubt ourselves if we're a part of that marginalized community. So if you think about for yourself, and we've kind of already been talking about this, but are there any specific societal messages that you've internalized that might be limiting your leadership potential? Are there any cultural influences that are limiting your leadership potential? Where are you saying, I can't lead because? And maybe you're already in a leadership role, right? But you're still holding back. You're not fully using your voice. You're not fully putting yourself out there. So I want to talk about this idea of, again, especially socially and culturally, when it comes to using your voice, when it comes to using your voice to elevate, using your voice to call out or call in, using your voice to share your vision, share your beliefs, right? And as a business owner, using your voice to reinforce what it is that you know and is your specialty. Limiting leadership belief. I can't lead because I'm too privileged. I should hush and let those most impacted lead. Megan, are you and I on the same path this month or what? Like that's literally what I was thinking yesterday while I was out going for my walk to go. Listen, can I tell you how important it is that we have quiet walks by ourselves or walks with music that's chill and not lyrics, Like and just have these moments to let these thoughts come up. Like that was my thought. I was like, where are you holding back because you think because you're white, I don't know, North American, where do you think, or where are you not stepping into certain conversations because you think that you shouldn't be there? And it's like, and I'm not saying to be in spaces where they're not my spaces and I shouldn't be taking center stage. I'm not saying that. But it's like, Lindsay, you can talk about these things. Even if it's not your lived experience, you can still elevate and highlight, share your thoughts, share like up a platform that people who can say these, talk these experiences. But I was really thinking about that. Like, yeah, I can feel where I'm holding back because I don't want to step on toes. And it's like, but who said I'm stepping on toes? Where am I stepping on toes if I am, and how can I not? Anyways, I don't have a fully formulated thought around this, but it's just an awareness I've been having because I feel like I've been doing the same thing. Right? I appreciate that one of the tenets of disability justice is leadership by those most affected. So I'm not sure where I fit, how I can help without doing harm. Well, I think you can start going into those kinds of spaces and hearing what people are saying. Right? Hear what people are saying. Hear the leaders. Platform them. feature them, right? And ask how you can support. I mean, again, this is leadership is communication, right? Brooke, what's up? Just listening quietly while I work, loving everything being said. Fantastic. So glad you're here. Hi. Hi, how are you? Okay. So I'm going to give you some things to think about throughout the rest of this day because I know we're at the top of the hour. Tell me in the comments if you would like for these to be 90 minutes. I can switch them to 90 minutes. I just feel like an hour goes so dang fast, but that's because we are big thinkers with big ideas and have a lot of things to talk about. But I wanted to leave a couple of questions with you and a couple of resources I'm going to share, and I will most likely go share these in the Facebook group as well. Actually, let me grab the Facebook group in case anyone here isn't already joined. Here's the Facebook group. So a couple of things for you to think about. I want you to think about this idea of where we're not using our voice and what might be socially, culturally have been impacting that. I want you to start to look at the other side of that and go, okay, so what are the things we talked about that I'm bringing to the table, right? What are my unique experiences and my, maybe it's education experiences, hang on, it is experiences, expertise. That's what we're looking for, expertise. So experience, expertise, education, whatever. What are the things that I am bringing to the table that are of benefit to the community, to the world, right? I also want you to think about your own sort of self leadership, right? Where is the self leadership that you're participating in? Things like having an open mind and being open to getting it wrong and learning, right? Or being a lifelong learner, or somebody who is open and always consuming diverse perspectives. Somebody who feels maybe fear around something, but challenges themselves to move beyond the fear to do the thing that's scary because they know ultimately it benefits them. Where you're having difficult conversations and doing the scary thing like around interpersonal relationships. So I really want you to think not just where you're leading community, but where am I just demonstrating self-leadership as well, right? Some of the things that I wanted to share with you today, if you haven't already, and I know I recommend these books all the time, I'm going to do it again right here. 2 books that I have for you are Nonviolent Communication and Super Communicators. These are great if you are somebody who wants to deepen your conversations with people and understand how to just be a better communicator. And then I think that's it, because the rest of the links I'm not going to share because we didn't really get into those topics today. I will say, when we think about having the confidence to step up into our leadership, if you haven't already read this book, it's a really fantastic book on bragging, the art of tooting your own horn without being obnoxious. And we actually did a workshop on this that you can go and watch the replay here, where I took the elements of the book and we did a workshop on it, and we've developed our own sort of brag bags, I think he calls it, or brag books. I can't forget what the author calls it. Anyways, so go and check that out. And then, as you kind of head into the rest of your week, your month here before our next shop talk, really think about, what are the characteristics of a leader? What have I learned about leadership over the years? How am I stepping into being a leader? And when it comes to this idea of waiting for permission, think about, where you are looking to others to lead or make decisions or do the thing first, and ask yourself, how can I step into that leadership role? How can I step into taking action, step into that conversation? And I also really, really, really want you all to give yourselves a lot of grace and a huge pats on the back for daring to lead, for daring to use your voice, for daring to share that vision for whatever you're working towards, and inviting people to come along that journey. And even the times where you got it wrong and you learned, because that means you're trying. That means you're trying. That means you're stepping into something amazing and powerful. And the world needs more people to step up and lead, and also foster leadership in others in the community. We need more of that. Friends, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I'm going to grab the link for our next shop talk so you can save your seat here. It's going to be on, when is it going to be? It'll be on May 9th. Whew, May 9th. If you haven't already, you can come save your seat for our co-working. We meet on the last Tuesday of the month for co-working on Zoom. So come save your seat here. And of course, I have been doing a lot of fun co-working on YouTube. I've been having days where I've got lots of work to do and I just pop on. And I think yesterday we sat here for 7 hours working. It was fantastic. So get in the Facebook group, get on my email list if you haven't already. Here, let me get my email list in case you're not on it. So that you can be alerted when we do our what should I call it? Hang on, email. When we do our co-working. Oh my goodness. Come on, Linz, use your fingers. And then finally, if you are not yet part of our IC Free Sales community, come and join here. If you are on my email list, you will know that I shifted to a pay what you can model last month. I'm very excited about that. So now it's just all of my memberships, my systems, everything is in one community. It's a 12-month community. You pay one price for the year, and there's a pay what you can option to make it accessible, because I believe business education should be available to everybody. If you want to use entrepreneurship to improve your life, it should be available to everybody, no matter what your financial situation is. So go check that out. Otherwise, friends, you are all amazing. You are all brilliant leaders. I am honored and delighted to be on this journey with you. And I wish you nothing but awesomeness and success and growth and fantastic conversations. I love you all so much. I will see you online. Have a great one and get out there.